So guys, tune into the show. Don't miss it, because it's going to be an amazing show. You are going to be touched. You're going to be amazed. You're going to be excited. It's Thursday, 11 o'clock on a Thursday. The Message Talk Show with Alex Gordon. Yes, don't miss it. So guys,
good morning, folks. Good morning. It's that morning again when your host, Alex Gordon, checks into the show, checks into the Message Talk Show Thursday morning, 11 o'clock. Hey, guys, call your friends. Call your friends. Call your friends. Get on that phone and call your friends. Hey, call your enemies, guys. Call the people who you want to be on the show today. Yes, the people you think need to hear this message today. We're talking about discover why and not the how. You know, sometimes we get consumed with how something's going to happen, how it's going to take place. And you know what? We don't do nothing because we can't see the how. So today we're talking about the why. And you know, it's like most things in life. You have special people in your life, people that you've come across, people that your path has crossed years ago, and every so often your path crosses again and again and again, and then they disappear for a while, then they come back again. Wow. Well, this lady is one such person. This lady is one such person. Good morning, Annette, Ruth Pearson.
Good morning.
It's great to see you today. Wow, it's amazing. The journey, the path, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. So today we have in house today this special lady. Her name is Annette. Yes. Ruth Pearson.
It truly has been a journey.
She'll be talking. Mm-hmm. She'll be talking to us today. She'll be sharing her heart. She'll be pouring out. And this lady can, you know what I mean? She can talk. She can talk. I met this lady a few years ago on the 4N network. Yes, the 4N network. And man, she went up and down this country speaking and talking about listening to your voice. So she'll be on the show and she'll be talking to us. So Annette, just wave and say how you are, how you're feeling this morning.
Hi, I'm feeling really honored to be on this show, because I know when we were talking in a 4 network meeting and you were talking about one day in the future I'm going to have my own talk show, and the dreams become a reality. So I'm really pleased now to be a guest on this show.
Woo! Man, you see, you're getting me nervous now. You're getting me nervous now. I don't normally get nervous, but when you go back to the past like that, I'm getting nervous. So before we kick off the show with Miss Ruth Pearson, today, guys, I just want you to feel at home, that you've called your friends, you called everybody on the show, because with the Message Talk Show, we believe that passion brings change. Yes? Passion brings change. So we talk to passionate and mission-centered individuals who want to get their message out, because we believe passionate and mission-centered individuals are the ones bringing change in this world today. Now, this very week, I heard a young man talk about, less talking and more action, less talking and more action. But I had to put a word out to him and say, guys, listen to this man. You've got to keep the conversation going, because it's only when you speak do the world know what you have. It's only when you speak that people understand you,
that the communication takes place. So even if things aren't going as fast as you want them to go, you've got to keep the conversation going and keep the speaking going. And that's what we do with the Message Talk Show. We keep the conversations going, we keep the communication going, and we show the world what passionate, mission-centered individuals are doing to bring change. So if you're an educator, if you're a trainer, if you're a content creator, if you're a coach, if you're a thought leader, if you're someone in the creative spectrum of your life, the one thing that you have to do is get your message out. Yes, it's about your message. You've got to get it out. Everything relies on your message. Everything relies on putting that message out to the world to bring a change and to make an impact. And that's what we're doing here on the Message Talk Show. So without no further ado, let me first say, guys, you know, the past 18 months, we've lived through a very traumatic time. Some people have lost a lot of people. Some people have been ill for a long period of time. But we still have to be grateful and thankful that we're still standing and we're here, ready to do what we came here to do. But the one thing that we must understand is that we have no control over the future. We have no control over the future. The one thing that we control is this moment that we're here right now. I'm here right now speaking to you. I'm here right now about to bring on Annette Ruth Pearson onto the show. We're here. And we're speaking. And that's what we control now. Tomorrow may never come. We don't know. The future may never come. So as you make your plans for the future, make sure today is solid. You're doing something today that's bringing change as well. Don't just look to the future and stop doing something today because you're going to do it in 12 months' time. You're going to do it in 6 months' time. You know, you've got these big plans for the future, but now is kind of, you know, what's going on now. So guys, let's welcome to the stage Miss Annette Ruth Pearson. So Annette, how are you today? How are you ready to go? Are you ready to talk? Are you ready to share what you've got inside of you today? Are you ready to share? Are you ready to talk? So Annette, let me first ask you, who do you serve? Who do you serve, Annette? Who do you serve? Okay, just tell my audience, who are you, who you serve, and what got you here? You know, guys, and sometimes everything don't work how you want it to work, but you've got to keep going. Yes. So, who are you? Who do you serve?
So
and what got you here?
Okay, so who am I? When Alex knew me first, he knew me in the education sector. And when Alex and I met, it was when I was having a time out from education. A time out because I was at a very low point in my life due to some personal challenges that I was going through. But in that time out, I met Alex and I met other what was the missing piece? I realized that the education taught us to be dependent on others and not to think for ourselves. That we needed to find out what is our purpose, what's our calling. See, I'm a science master, and I need to, as a science teacher, still bring out those things in their life. So as I went on this journey, I realized that I had within me skills from the education. I talk about my wilderness journey. And I think because of that wilderness journey, because of the challenges in my life that I have been on, that's what's got me to this point here in my life. Being able to share with others that we don't have to let challenges in our lives keep us down, that those challenges we can use as stepping stones to greatness. So that's what I do with others. I let them take those broken pieces. You know, when you get a glass or a jar and you just, well, not a jar, something crockery, and you drop it on the floor and it grows all over the place. And you're thinking, what am I going to do with this? I help people pick up those broken pieces and put them back together. And when they put them back together, they realize that they were stronger than when they were dropped.
Wow, you help people put the broken pieces back together. Wow. Well, just let's worry, because when something breaks and it shatters, my God, it's so many different pieces. But hey, it's amazing when you can put something back together and it becomes whole again. So guys, you're joining us wherever you're joining us from today. We have Annette, Ruth, Pearson in the show today, talking about discover the why and not the how. So I want to welcome you to the podcast, welcome you to the Message Talk Show, wherever you're coming in from. Call your friends in, call everyone in, because we're ready to have some decent conversation here about why and not how. Because if you follow the trend of thought to find out how, then you might not do anything at all, because you're caught up in just looking for signs of things to happen, signs of things to occur. So Ruth, what made you take the break from what you were doing at the time? What made you take that break? What made you take the break?
Done so many years that now you might have to go and change and do something different. That was scary. But I took a leap of faith and thought, well, if this is the path and the journey I need to be on, then I will go on that journey. And as I went on that journey, doors started to open and I started to meet people who helped me along that journey and made me realize there was so much more within me than I had just as a teacher.
But it's great to think of a journey, as if I want to get to Birmingham or anywhere in the country, I said, okay, I know where I'm going to go. I jump in the car and I drive because I know where I'm going. But then to suddenly think of taking a journey that you haven't got a clue of the end of it. You haven't got a clue, but you're taking positive steps every day. What does that feel like?
I used to say to people initially, and even now, imagine that you're walking on a bridge. So literally, when you walk on a bridge, so when we go, for example, for Dartford Town, the bridge is already made. So you know that when you put your foot on that bridge, you know where that bridge is taking you. But on this journey that I was going on, literally the bricks were being put and built as I was walking. So it was very, very when I sit back and I think about the journey, it's only my faith and that got me where I was, because I knew deep down that God had given me a dream and God had given me a vision. And I use the story of Joseph very much as a anchor, that God gave Joseph a dream and said to Joseph, this is what you're going to become, that you're going to become a leader. And Joseph, as he went through life, he went further and further and further away from his dream. But because he knew where God was calling him to, he just kept going. And that's how I went on this journey. I knew that God called me to be a leader. I knew he had a purpose and reason for my life. I didn't know how, I didn't know why. And at times it was really scary and frightening, because when I'm someone that likes to have things in control, I like to map out where I'm going to go to. And for the first time in my life, that wasn't the case. And therefore, as if you're in that situation where you know that God has called you to do something, but you're not sure the how, you know the why, but you don't know the how, it can be so difficult. But then that's where you have to trust and have people around you that support and believe in you to help you going through those moments when you're not quite sure what to do next.
But you see, you're in my favorite story now. You're in my favorite story from the good book about Joseph, because one of the things I used to talk about Joseph all the time, because you know what? The very first thing that you hear about Joseph is him telling his dream to his parents, and what their thought of him. You know, they kind of dismissed him. Oh, what does he know?
Mm-hmm.
But the next
Mm-hmm.
big thing that you read about Joseph was his pit experience. I'm thinking, why did he have to have a pit experience so early in his life, when his own people turned against him and he was in a physical pit? It was in a hole. He couldn't move, he couldn't go, and he was totally waiting for someone to come along and pull him out of the pit. Why do you think that we need to have a pit experience in our life?
I think that pit experience, I mean, as I shared with you, my pit experience taught me not to depend on myself. I have been all my life so independent, do everything for myself, could just go through and do what I needed to do. But my pit experience was the first time I had to let go of me and have other people guide and lead. And when you're in that dark pit and you don't know what's going to happen next, as you say, the only person you can depend on in that pit is God. And I think that's when Joseph was in that pit. He knew he couldn't depend on his brothers, because his brothers were the ones that had put him there. So the only person when you're in that dark place is your faith. Your faith to know, okay, I might be here, but if God says to me, this is where I'm going to be, I've got to hold on. Even if I say to people at times, I used to hold on by a thin thread, nothing, no solid cord. It was a thin thread at times. But that's what kept me going. And I'm sure with Joseph, when Joseph was in that pit.
But Ruth, we're humans, and how do you know that's supposed to where you? How do you really know that's where you're supposed to be? How do you know? How do you know that you know that you know that you know that's where you're supposed to be? How? How do you know?
Well, let me tell you. When you're in that pit initially, you don't know. You don't know. When I was in that pit, when I was going through the time of therapy and all the other stuff, when I was in that dark pit, when you and I met, I didn't know that pit was part of my journey. And, when you are going through it, especially with a faith-based background, and you find yourself in these pits, sometimes you sit down, you question God, and you ask that question that everybody asks: why? Why am I going through these experiences in my life? But when you then start to look back, and I think that's with me, I started to look back. And as I look back, I realized that pit experience helped to move me and shift me from where I was to where I needed to be. And if you think about Joseph as well, if Joseph had stayed with his brothers, he wouldn't have gone to Egypt. The pit experience was the passport to take him to Egypt. So when we go through these pit experiences, sometimes they're the passport to take us where we need to be. Because if I didn't go through my pit experience, you and I would never have met, because I would have just been in school doing the stuff I was doing before. But God had to move us to a new location, and to move us, it was through a pit.
The pit is the detour. Okay, the pit was the detour. And so you're not sure, but and this is, I mean, you briefly stepped into it just then when you talked about the pit experience. Because I'm going to say to you, for the audience out there, what does a pit look like? And you briefly talked about therapy, but what did your pit experience kind of look like, and how long did it last?
Oh, my pit experience was very, very dark, extremely dark. It was lonely. It was dark. It was like you question yourself. Why are you here? What have you done wrong? You go internal. There's so much internalization takes place. And I remember, like, when I first had my first therapy session, and my therapist told me that I was being selfish. Now, when you hear the word selfish, that's a negative word. And she told me I was being selfish, and she told me I was being dishonest. Now, when a therapist tells you that, you're thinking that I'm being selfish and I'm being dishonest. And then she explained I was being selfish because the same way that I help other people, I need to let people help me. And if I wanted the therapy to work, I needed to let people in that space with me. And I was being dishonest because I was in a really dark place, but I didn't let people know I was in a dark place. And sometimes when we're in those dark places, we put a mask on. We let everybody know and think that everything's fine. But really within, your heart is broken. You know that you're feeling like every day that, can I get out? Can I go through this again? That's how that dark place feels. And sometimes you don't even just want to get out of bed. When you're in that dark place, you just want to just wrap yourself in that space and don't want to communicate with anyone, don't want to be around anybody. That's how dark that place can be.
So I can imagine it's like, leave me alone, don't trouble me, leave me alone, don't bother me.
Mm-hmm.
And the crazy thing about it is that when we like to help people, we like to give help, and we like people to receive the help from us. But when we need the help, or when you needed the help, that's what your therapist was talking about. You are being totally selfish because you're not allowing other people, and in faith terms, to minister to you. You're not allowing other people to minister to you, to help you, to bring you through. So what was the one focus that when you were going through all of this, what was the clear focus that you could see? What was the guiding light that was ahead of you that you saw that kept you going? Because something had to keep your steps going. Something had to keep you dragging yourself along or pulling yourself. What was it? What was that guiding light look like?
I think the guiding light was the more I was in therapy, the more I was growing, the more I was learning about myself and others. My therapist then made me realize, because at the time I was writing a book around my experiences, initially it was going to be called Same Opportunities, Different Outcomes. Why is it when different people have the same opportunities, they have different outcomes? Because I was like angry with the education system. I was angry with a lot of things in life. But as I worked through that anger, the therapist made me realize that I could use my teaching skills in a positive way. That the journey that I had been on, if I could record that in a book and I could show other people that this is where I was, but this is where I am now, that therefore this pit experience wouldn't just be wasted. And I think that's what then made me realize, okay, so I can use my teaching skills in a new way. That instead of just reaching the students in my classroom, I could use my books, I could talk, I could share with my experiences with others, and then I could help them to know that when they go through those experiences in their life, that they could be their stepping stone to where they need to be. And I think for me, that was a big light bulb moment. And I think that, eventually, like when I reached the end of the book, that there was like certain things that if you've written a book, Alex, so it got to the editing stage. And my therapist kept wanting to know what was it that really put me, like they couldn't reach the core of what would cause the problem. We were like on the surface. And I was doing this exercise called the circle of blame. And in the circle of blame, you take responsibility for what you take responsibility for, and you allow the other parties to take responsibility for what they took, their part that they played. And in the midst of all of this, I realized that I always used to speak up for the person that didn't have a voice. And in this school I was working with, that the students didn't want that. They didn't want that. They didn't want to actually have somebody speak on their behalf. And they would do everything they could to bully staff that was in the school because that was the game they played. And for me, that didn't equate in my brain. And that's what caused me to have the meltdown, because their way of life and thinking was completely different than what I had grown up with and what I had thought was true and right. And as I got to that point, then I was able to let go of what had caused me to be in this place and realize it was nothing I had done. Because I was like questioning, well, what did I do wrong? But then I realized I hadn't done anything wrong. It was just our value systems were different.
Wow. Recognizing that the value systems are different and it wasn't something that you were doing wrong. How long did it take you to get to that stage?
Oh, a long time. It was probably about a good year plus. I was like coming, like we'd spent a lot of time in therapy, a lot of time looking at my childhood and the experiences I went through. So yeah, so it was a good year into therapy when the penny finally dropped. And then in the end, I just like had to realize, okay, that different people have different values, and I can't, in terms of when we're going through our own value system, that I have to be true to me. And no matter what other people might want to say and what other labels they might want to put on me, that I have to be true to myself. And the more I'm true to myself, then that will give me that inner peace that I need.
And that, that's that. Well, it's kind of crazy, isn't it? Because if someone had sat you down and told you all of this, you probably would just totally dismiss it. You'd have just ignored it and go, no, that's nonsense what you're telling me. But you had to arrive there yourself, your own thoughts in your own time. You had to arrive at that point. But one of the things I want to stress here, because as a people, we've kind of got what is it now? Therapy is not something that we do naturally. We don't kind of do therapy, so to speak. And so going to therapy, what pushed you in that direction to actually take it upon yourself to go to therapy?
I didn't actually, if I tell you the story about me going to therapy, I didn't actually go voluntarily. It was like my GP basically said, this is where you need to go, or otherwise I might find myself in hospital. So the choice of being in hospital to try and get out of where I was, or on antidepressants, which is I didn't want to be. So that was the choice: hospital, antidepressants, or therapy. So I took the therapy route. And I think because I had done counseling and training, counseling training before and mentorship, I knew that counseling and I knew talking therapies work if you're true and honest. If you are not honest, then talking therapies don't work. So I knew within myself that it was a tool that I could use. And I'd been to counseling before and I knew that it had benefited me. So now that I found myself in therapy, I just sat down and thought, okay, this is the next phase of my journey. But I remember sitting in therapy. I always share this experience. Now, I'm not a person that shares my emotions. And we were sitting in this group therapy session. And as these women were sharing, they were asking us why we were there. And as we were there, people were talking about their experiences. And one by one, they were crying. And I turned around and I said to myself, I don't cry. And literally, when it got to my turn, they give us like a pad that we make comments on. I felt myself literally picking this pad up and putting it in front of my face. And I said, I'm not continuing. And I saw myself doing it, couldn't stop myself. And that was the first time in my life I realized I needed the help. Because up until that time, I was in denial that I needed to be there. But that was the catalyst that made me realize, actually, I do need the help, because I need to get myself out of this pit that I was in. Because I realized, you see, as a community, we're good at putting a wall around ourselves to protect ourselves from all our feelings and all our emotions. We trap ourselves. That's the problem. We trap ourselves in here. We put the wall up to stop other people from getting in, but then we trap ourselves. And we need to be able to get out of that trap so that we can then go and re-engage with life. And as long as we keep that wall around us, then as long as we keep ourselves trapped, we then can't go and do what we have to do with our life. So that was my turning point when I realized how trapped I was in that space emotionally.
Wow. And that's truly a pit experience, as Bella just says, wow, a pit experience. You're enclosed, and you're enclosed in your own mind, and you can't break out yourself unless someone helps to navigate you out of that path. I mean, Bella is saying, what a powerful story. This is an amazing story. And I think one of your outlets was writing. Yeah, one of your outlets was writing.
Yeah.
And that sent you down the road of your very first book. What was the first book you wrote?
So my first book was called Listening for God's Voice. It's a book of 40 devotionals. And it started off with my healing episode. So I, 1996 was diagnosed with the autoimmune illness lupus. And one of the times when I have that, I'm unable to walk, basically. It impacts my mobility so much. And in 2014, I had a really serious flare-up, 2 flare-ups, spent 3 weeks in hospital at one case, then came out. And when I came out, I wasn't working. And this is when a book coach I had met previously contacted me and said, Ruth, God is saying this is the time now for you to write your book. Now, I'm a science and maths teacher. English has never been my forte. For someone to come and tell me to write a book, it's like, I don't write books.
What did they say
But
to you?
she said,
what was the actual
God
word she said to you?
Her
God
actual
had
word
told
for
her.
me, God had told her to contact me because now was the time for me to write my book. Because I had been in her space before and wanted to write my book before, but somehow or other, every time I was sending her materials, it would never get there. And what was really interesting is that the day before she contacted me, I was listening to a audio by T.D. Jakes, and it was talking about you basically that God was going to restore, that God was going to make you pregnant with an idea, and this idea that He's going to make you pregnant with is going to transform your life. Now, then she rings me the next day and tells me, right, this is the time for me to write my book. Now, you imagine, I'm sick on my bed.
Hold up there, Ruth. Come on, roll. Pull the brakes there, Ruth. Pull the brakes there,
Okay.
Ruth. Pull the brakes there, Ruth. You said the statement was you're going to be pregnant with an idea that's going to change your life. What does it mean to be pregnant with an idea?
Well, like if you know a normal pregnancy, a seed is planted. Okay, so when that seed is planted, that seed has to grow. And the seed doesn't grow straight away. It has to go through all this developmental stage. Now, if you see a baby that's in the womb when it's first growing, it doesn't look like a baby. You know, it does not look like a baby. But over a period of time, it starts to take shape. And when it takes shape, it still has to have that time of development before it can born. And like a baby's 9 months. So like I was being told, like in this journey, that this was going to be a marathon and not a sprint, that it's not going to be something that's going to happen straight away, that it's going to take time for this baby that's within you to grow. And I remember, as I said, I was sick on my bed. And she said to me, I was due to go to this women's retreat called Overcoming Emotional Baggage with other women from different denominations. And she goes, how about you write 3 devotions for the women, or you can share devotions that you've had before. So sick on my bed, I wrote these 3 devotions. The first one called Listening to Your Voice. The second one, Be a Good Witness. And the third one, Refreshed and Restored. Then I took sick again and ended back up in hospital now, even sicker than I was before. And at this time, I'm thinking, like, I'm not going to make it. You know, I mean, the first time I was sick, you know, I had a day of calling family and friends and say, you know what, I might not make it. And now I found myself sick again and back in the hospital. But in that time, it's like God was putting things into place. But at the time, we didn't understand what He was doing. And I had to have daily physiotherapy. And that was what was keeping me in the hospital. And then the physiotherapy team said, well, we have a physiotherapy service where she can go home and we can come to her home. So late on the Thursday evening, I got out of the hospital. And therefore, the physiotherapist came on the Friday and started the treatment. And I said to him, can I go away for this weekend? And he said, well, yes. You know, my doctor said, yeah, it might be good for you to just go away because it was out of London at a country resort with other women. They said the change will be good for you. So late on the Friday, I left home, my mobility scooter working. We arrived at the retreat and it decided it wasn't going to work. So there I am, not walking, in a lot of pain, just got out of hospital, being told by my doctors that I have to be careful. And now we're at this retreat. And on the Friday evening, we had a worship session, a session taken by a woman called Joyce. And in this meeting, she was talking about our world is going to change this weekend, that we're not going to go back home the same way that we came. And if you're from a faith background and you've been to these retreats, we've heard this time and time again, that we go to this retreat, we have a mountaintop experience, and then we come back and we have to re-engage with life. And as she was talking, I wrote down everything she said in the book. And she talked about our lives were going to change. She talked about God wants a willing vessel. She talked about our life is going to change. Our name is going to change, that God is going to take us on this journey. And I shared my first devotional that day called Listening to Your Voice. And then on the Saturday morning, we had a whole presentation about forgiveness and how sometimes when we're ill and we're going through challenges in our lives, that we need to forgive those who've hurt us. And sometimes that person who's hurt us is ourselves. So we need to forgive others. And then the next presentation was called Will the Real Me Stand Up? And it was talking about all the baggage, all the areas of well-being that we need to
Sorry.
And I shared my second devotion.
Repeat
Okay.
that title again. Repeat that title again. I have to make a note of this one. Repeat that title again.
Right. Will the real me stand up?
Woo.
Yeah,
Will
so
the real me stand up?
Not the me stand up. Yeah, so not the me that other people see around, but the real me, the me that has all these baggages taken off. Because you see, when you have so many baggages on your shoulder, emotional baggage, mental baggage, financial baggage, social baggage, when these baggages are on you, they weigh you down. So you bend over. If you put loads of luggage on your back, you don't walk straight. But when you take off all these baggages, you're able to stand up straight. So that's why we need to get rid of these emotional baggages so the real me can stand up.
So what's stopping us standing up as a real me is, number one, the emotional baggage.
Mm-hmm.
What was the second one you said?
Mental baggage, the
baggage?
mental challenges that we're going through, our financial baggage, our spiritual baggage, all of these things that we carry in terms of that hinder our well-being, all of them we carry. And when we carry them, they weigh us down.
And we're carrying them emotionally. That's what you're saying.
Yes, we're carrying all of these baggages emotionally. And as we carry them, then they impact our lives. And sometimes, you see, the problem with these baggages is because they're invisible, we don't actually realize we're carrying them until we put them down.
Whoa, they're invisible. What's stopping you is invisible, guys. It's not the physical things that's stopping you from going where you want to go. It's the invisible things. It's the things that's cluttering your mind, cluttering your thoughts, holding you back, putting you back in the pit. Am I right?
Definitely putting you back in the pit. And therefore, it was like, when that presentation took place, you can imagine, I'm writing all this stuff down in my notebook. And then I shared the second devotional called Be a Good Witness. Now, little did I realize that by the end of that day, I was going to be a good witness. Because you see, the lady who did the presentation
so while all of this was going on, you were still unable to walk. Yeah?
I was still unable to walk. I was still in a lot of pain. I was still at this retreat. Everywhere I go, I needed someone to carry me, like hold me, So that's where I was. I was still unable to walk. But this lady who did the presentation the day before, who was saying that God wants to have a living witness to show his journey and his life to others, she went on her knees that lunchtime and said, God, you need to heal Ruth as I was at the time. And then she came that afternoon. We were in the middle of a praise and worship church service. And she came over to me. Now, this time my feet was up on the chair. I had my feet resting. It was the end of the day. And she came and she said that I need to go with her. Now, remember, I can't walk. My mobility scale's not working. And she wants me to go into the middle of the room. And I'm thinking, I'm not going. But my friend who was with me said, Ruth, go. And she took my hand and she held me and she took me into the middle of the room. And she took me and put me in the middle of the room. She then touched my head and she touched my hips. And as she touched my head and my hips, I started to cry. And as I cried, I became so emotional, I couldn't stand up. So I knelt down on the floor.
You were sitting in the wheelchair. Were you sitting in the wheelchair?
I was sitting in a chair. I was sitting in a chair, not a wheelchair, an ordinary chair. So I was sitting in an ordinary chair with my feet up because, as I said to you, my multibility scooter won't work. So there was no point
Right.
we carry it around with us.
Right.
So everyone would just, I had two people that would just walk with me and carry me where I needed to be with my with my stick. Right. So I was sitting in this chair and she took me into the middle of the room. And as I said, I became so emotional that I cried and I knelt down on the floor. And I thought that when I was on the floor, I thought I had gone to sleep. But those who were watching me said, no, Ruth, you cried and you cried and you cried from, when you cry from the belly, cry from that inner core. That's what they were saying. You were just crying and crying and crying. And after you finished crying so deeply, they said, I stopped and curled up in a fetal position and I was just still. And they were just watching and thinking, okay, what's happening here? And then God started to speak to one of the other presenters who was there, the one who talked about forgiveness. And God told her, you need to tell Ruth to stand up and walk. Now imagine we're in a church, we're in a hotel, right? We're in a hotel. We're not in a church.
Woo!
We're not in no place of worship. And God is telling her to tell Ruth to rise up and walk. And she touched me on the shoulder and she said, Ruth, rise up. She didn't say that and walk. And she said, Ruth, rise up. And they took my hand. And remember that presentation with the real me stand up and how you stand up tall because all the baggage and weight? That's what I did. I stood up tall. My back was straight and I stood tall, my shoulders, and I'm thinking, wow. And then they took me around the room. And as they took me around the room, you could imagine the tears that were in my eyes and the eyes of the women there who'd seen this miracle.
You were physically moving your legs yourself. You were moving
I was physically
the legs
moving.
yourself.
I was physically moving my legs. Now, if you thought that was a miracle, the lady then took me in the middle of the room and she walked by my side. And as she walked by my side, I was walking. She was one side, I was the next. And then she said to me, Ruth, you need to run. Now, remember, I couldn't walk a few minutes ago. And now she's telling me to run. And there I was running back and forward in this hotel room. And you can imagine when I went back to my friend, the tears, the crying, that this God who we had served all these years came in that hotel room because he wanted to make me and the women who were there know that we were special.
Wow.
And that was my turning point. That was my turning point in my life.
But can you imagine that at that point of your life and you're asking the question, why? Because this is happening to you. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
All this happening to you, the emotional baggage, the mental baggage, the trauma, is all happening at the same time. And you're asking the question in your head, why? Why? Mm-hmm. You're going through therapy. Why? Why? But where's the answer coming from? Were there any answers coming to you at the time?
No. I mean, when I went to that retreat, so the therapy came the year afterwards, which is why me being in that deep pit of therapy, that was why it was even more darker. But when I was going through all of this, I didn't understand why. But then if you go back to these 3 devotions that I want to share. So the first one was called Listening to Your Voice. The second one was called Be a Good Witness. But the third one was called Refreshed and Restored. And you see, I went back home that weekend, refreshed and restored. When I went home, I remember what the neighbors, they came out because obviously, you remember, they had seen me leave Friday in a multibility chair. And now they see me come back on Sunday walking. Now they know where I was, right? And some of them would just pinch me and say, well, it's really you. But it's like, they just could not imagine that such transformation could take place. And I just had to share that, this lady had enough faith. She had enough faith to go and pray to God and say to God, you need to heal Ruth. And when she took me in the middle of the room, she had enough faith that God was going to heal me. Now, for me,
she had enough faith just to tell you, because you can't, that kind of thing, you can't tell some people.
When she took me in the middle of the room, I didn't know that that's what she had prayed. I didn't know at the time when she took me in the middle of the room that she had prayed for God to heal me. I didn't know that. Because if I had known that, would I have gone? I don't know. But she had the faith. And then the person who bent down on the floor and touched me and said to me, Ruth, get up, rise up. She had the faith. She knew that I was going to walk. She didn't have the words "and walk." The "and walk" didn't come up. The "Ruth Rise Up" came out of her mouth. And that's what ended up going in my first book. The beginning of my first book shared my miracle, written by these two women and the journey that they went on with God, listening to God. And when God gave them instructions, for them to act on those instructions. And that then, at the end of the weekend, the women were there and they're going, "Me, when did you write these 3 devotions?" And I said to them, when I was sick on my bed. And they said, "Do you realize that this was your life? Number one, on the Friday, you listened to the voice of God. On the Saturday, you were a good witness. And on the Sunday now, you're going back home refreshed and restored." So that was
Wow.
the seed that was planted in the why in my journey. And the listening to your voice, as you know, then became the title of my business, because God wanted me to know that as I listen to his voice, then I can help others to listen to his voice and listen to the voice of each other's. So when that seed, that idea that I told you about TD Jakes that was planted, that was the
Pregnant with
seed
an
that was
idea.
planted, pregnant with an idea. And that idea was that we need to listen to the voice of God and we need to listen to the voice of each other.
Wow, Ruth, I'm sitting here and I'm nervous myself, Ruth. I'm nervous myself, Ruth, and I haven't been through what you've been through. And to see you come out the other end, what would you say to a young person now today who are trying to be the person they want to become? What would you say to that young person today, or young people today?
I would say to them, what are you passionate about? What are you passionate? What gets you when you get up in the morning? What do you really like to do? It might be something education based. It might be, all these boys that like to play football, or it might be dancing, it might be writing, it might be artwork. What is it that's passionate? What drives you? And when you know what it is that drives you, make sure you have some of that in your life each week. But besides that, make sure that you get yourself a good education, because we know that education opens doors. Now, when I'm talking about a good education, I mean all round, not just the academic. So I tell my students that I teach science, as I said to you, and teach maths. And I tell them science covers every single topic of the curriculum. So I make sure that when I'm teaching my science, I have creative parts, I have the drama, I have all these different subjects in there, because I know I need to reach the students who are in my class. So the ones who are not good at maths, there's no point I just do the maths work. I've got to give them outlets so that they can see, yes, they are coming in this subject, but it's teaching them life skills. And I think that's what I learned by being out in the business world. The business world wants us to learn life skills, not just academic knowledge. Education, exams, teach us to regurgitate what it is the examiners are looking for. But do they teach us life skills? That's what was needed to be able to have the skills. So me now, coming from a teaching background, was able to use those teaching skills in a new way. And that's what the young people need to know, that those skills that they learn in that area that they are good at, they can then use those skills in new ways and in creative ways. So that's what advice I'd say to the young person.
Wow, man, you're overflowing, Ruth. You are overflowing, Ruth. Well, let me jump into the second question now, Ruth. What would you say to a young person, young people trying to switch lanes? Because sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. You have been educated and you've been conditioned for one particular role, and then you're trying to switch lanes. What would you say to that person? Could be man or woman.
I would say to that person, why? I'd ask the first question: why do you want to switch lanes? Right? Do you know what's driving you to switch the lanes? And if the why is big enough, then no matter what people say to you, you will go down that lane. Because you see, sometimes other people want you to go down a lane that's not your why, it's their why. But when you discover your skills, your talents, and that little seed, that little voice that's within you and saying, actually, this is where you need to go to, then that's what will drive you to go down and switch that lane. But I'll warn you, it's not easy. It's not easy because everybody's going to want to pull you back to the old lane, especially
Everybody's got something to tell you.
Especially if that old lane they think is going to be more lucrative and better for you than going down the new lane. They're going to want to keep pushing you back there. And that's where you then need to know that why your why. That why is what is going to push you. And that's why the show's called You Discover Your Why. Because if you know your why, it will keep you going through those low moments and those times when other people are going to say to you, I told you not to go there. I told you that that wasn't a good journey to go on. You've got to be strong within yourself and have people around you that support you on this new journey. So for myself, I had people around me that supported me on this new journey. And that's why I stayed, because otherwise I would have got off the bandwagon so many times and just go back to what I knew. But they kept saying to me, Ruth, there's so much within you that needs to come out. And if you go back, you're going to miss the growth that's going to take place in this new place. So as you go on this journey, know that there you're going to learn. And you may go back to the original journey. I went back to teaching, but I went back as a completely different teacher than I was before. So this detour might be giving you the skill set then for you to go back and impact where you were in the first place, but stronger.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Now, you've talked a lot about listening, about hearing, about talking, about, and you mentioned God quite a few times. Now, let me throw this another way at you. Do you listen to your gut instincts?
I listen, definitely. I'm beginning more and more to realize. It's interesting. This morning, I was having my devotional time, and God took me back to the story of Elijah. Now, I'm just going to share this little story. Elijah went to the king and told the king that it wasn't going to rain for 3 days. Now, where did Elijah get that message from? God had to speak to him and tell him that it wasn't going to rain. And then he went to the king and delivered the message. And so be it that for 3 years, it didn't rain. And then eventually God now says to him, you need to go now and have this conversation and tell the king now it's going to rain. Now, as Elijah was going on this journey, he had pits and he had his pit moment too. And when he had his pit moment, he ran from Jezebel and then found himself in this cave. And then when he was there, God didn't speak to him in the earthquake or in this whole big thing. God came and spoke to him in that still small voice. And that's what God was basically trying to say to me. It's not in the big things. It's in those quiet moments when you have these thoughts within your head that you know are not your thoughts. That's how God speaks. And that's how now I'm beginning to listen more and more to that voice. And that voice is what I'm using now to lead and guide me on my way. I don't get it right all the time, because sometimes when the voice comes, I ignore it. And then I sit down and think, I wish I had followed it. But I'm beginning more and more to realize that's the voice I need to listen to.
Wow, Bella has just said, wow, just incredible. And I'm getting here from all the way from the US. I'm getting amen from the US.
Oh, that's my friend
they're
Kim.
tuning into
Kim. Now, let me share
saying.
now. Let me share this story with you. Kim's on this call now. When you're talking about listening to a voice, Kim and I were part of this women's group. It's basically women to do with not competition, working together, collaboration over competition. And Kim and I were part of this book that was released at the beginning of lockdown. And I read Kim's story in this book. And as I was reading Kim's story in this book, I thought Kim and I need to meet. And God again had this journey that at the time I was beginning to start to do some radio work, but I had to shelve that. But I interviewed Kim, and Kim shared her faith story with me. And when we were finishing, Kim says to me, God has put within my heart for me to go and get these women to write their story of how they have found God when grace found me. And I said to Kim, God has just laid on my heart that I need to set up my own publishing company. And Kim and I said, well, okay, you have the women that need to write the story. I have a publishing company. Let us come together and use this direction that God is taking us on and see where it goes. I can stand here today and say, not only have we got one book, but this week we launched the 3rd book of the When Grace Found Me series as part of, what's my publishing company called? Listening to Your Voice Publishing. That God took Kim and I and these 50 women on a journey to share our faith journeys at a time just like this. So when you talk about listening to the voice and God leading and guiding, Kim and I are living proof that God can take someone from America and connect them with someone here in the UK to do his work.
Wow, my, you're just blowing us away here. You're blowing us away here, Ruth. My, with all the stuff that's coming out of you. And, you know, it's amazing when you kind of follow what's coming through you. Yeah. Some people don't quite understand what you're talking about. They don't quite understand that connection to God or whatever. But what people understand is that something's pushing them to take action. Something's prompting them. They're being prompted. They're being prompted in their hearts. They're being prompted in their minds, and they're dismissing it because they're not quite in connection with the flow. They're not in connection with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying this is amazing because when I looked you up today on Amazon, I said, let me go and check out Ruth and see what Ruth has been up to. Yeah. And I went and checked you out on Amazon, And when I went and checked you out on Amazon, I said, my man, Ruth has been busy. Ruth has been busy. She has been busy producing. She has been busy writing, connecting her stories. And and I came across all the books that you've done so far. Just talk us through this of the books you put out, and the ones that you haven't even put on there yet.
Yeah, lockdown. So the last 18 months for a lot of people has been a difficult time. But during lockdown, God allowed me to use my skills and talents in a different way. So as I said to you, that the book Women Embracing Their Superpowers, that was the book, one of the catalyst books that started this journey. And then from there, like, God was saying to me, I want you to write your own book. So I wrote the book called Home at Last, and it was just called Your Journey of Faith. Because those of you who listened right from the beginning of this podcast interview, you will see that my life has truly been a journey of faith. And then when I wrote the book, the person who edited the book said to me, Ruth, this book is too good for you to just go and drop on Amazon. Go find yourself a publisher. And I went and I found Winston Duncan, that you had interviewed her before, that again, when I was in this wilderness journey, her and I met. And she said, Ruth, I've been looking for someone to share the publishing business with, how to print their own books, like work alongside me. So we decided that we were going to go on this journey. So Home at Last, Your Journey of Faith in Challenging Times became my first book that I published under my label, working alongside with Winston Duncan. And then, as I said to you, Kim then came along with these books, When Grace Found Me. And you can see book 1 and book 2. And later today, I've got to put book 3 on there. And then the journey continued. And then Winston, when it's lockdown, says, how about we get some women together to write a book about transformative leadership on the rise, sharing our story about how we've gone on this business journey and how we can empower others to go on the journey. And then Pioneering Women, that was birth. And then, as I said to you, this last year, I've been through a really, really difficult time with bullying in the workplace and other challenges. And as I shared with you when I had my meltdown, that was again due to bullying that took place in the workplace. So I had an opportunity to come together with 11 other women to write my story, how I went and survived through bullying in the education sector. And then, as you can see, singled out the corporate pandemic, that gave birth. And I can share with you hot off the press that there's going to be another book added to this series, probably next month, my first children's book. I've literally been working on my first children's book around gratitude and prayer, because I realized that if we teach our young children to be grateful for what they have, and we teach them how to pray, that we can impact the next generation from when they're young, so that they can come through much healthier than when they don't have the gift of gratitude and prayer. So yes, writing is part of the journey now that I have been on.
Writing has been part of the journey that Ruth has been on, and this has
that,
been an
as you will
amazing
see,
journey.
My name, yeah.
Go on, keep talking. No, go on. You said writing has been part of the journey.
My name, a journey that I've been on, and my name has changed. So that's another story. We'll share that for another day. But as I looked at what Annette meant, I realized that when you look up famous Annettes, 3 of them are writers and 1 of them's an author. So I realized, and they have a space there for add famous. And I said, my name's going to be added there as another one of these famous writers and authors, not under the name Ruth, but under the name Annette, because that's part of my purpose. When I was looking into what the name Annette means, it meant powerful and complete. And it meant that you're going to use the gifts and journeys that God has given you, not to impact your lives, but to impact the lives of others. And the more I realized that that was where God was taking me, this hidden person all this time gave birth during the summer holidays to Annette. And that really then was able now for me to know the why, because the Annette name gives me the why for what I'm doing.
Wow.
And I just thank God for allowing me to go on that journey.
Your friend has come back and said, "Love you, sister. God is good."
Yes,
An
yes, Kim.
amazing
Yes,
connection
Kim. So
there.
true.
An amazing
Yes.
connection.
Yeah.
Wow, Ruth, it's been amazing talking to you today. It's been amazing talking to you, hearing your stories, and we haven't even covered some of the stuff that that's out there. This is just a very small section, and time is just upon us. But there's three things I pulled from you today, and you've covered this, and I just wanted to summarize on this because I felt that one of the things that you pointed out, you said it's the invisible things that are stopping us. Yeah, and sometimes we're looking around for thinking, what's causing harm to my life? What's preventing me from doing the things I want to do? But you talked about the invisible things. You talked about the emotional baggage. You talk about the mental baggage. You talk about the baggages that we carry that hold us tied down or trapped where we are. That was the first thing. The second thing you talked about was a pit experience. And I think, wow, that pit experience. And you said, well, the way you structured that, the pit experience is for a reason. It has to happen. It has to happen. And the third thing you said was the reason why the pit experience has to happen was because number 3, other people need to be helping you. They need to minister to you, to help you to where you want to get to. And sometimes we try to do everything ourselves. So what would be your closing, to then say to someone who's spoken, who's written, to come up with a sentence or a paragraph, that's very restricted. But what is it that you'd like to say to people right now as we close the show?
I like to share with them the quote that you and I, remember the time when I was trying to find a quote for my book? I'm going to share with them the quote that you and I constructed together all those years ago. Listen to your inner voice and don't let anyone stop you from being the person you know within you need to be. And as you listen to that inner voice will lead and guide you. Some call it gut feeling, some call it the voice of God. Whatever that inner voice means to you, listen to that inner voice and let it lead and guide you to be who you need to be.
Wow, Ruth, I felt like I've been on a roller coaster ride, Ruth. I've not moved out of my seat, but I've been on an emotional roller coaster ride, taking the corners with you, feeling everything that you've been through. Even the conference that you spoke about, I wasn't there, but I felt it. I felt when you stood up. I felt when you ran around the room. I felt when you took all those acts of faith to get you to where you are, the person you are today. And you're closing with talking about the children's book that you're now writing, your first hot off the press that's coming out soon. Now, you want to talk about that again and where people can find that book? Be able to find it.
The book is going to be out on Amazon and other good Christian bookshops because I know they're going to pick up the book. So watch this space. Follow me on social media. And you will see literally I'm sharing it out, but literally it's coming hot off the press. I've been working on it this week. Hope to get my proof copy next week. And then, yes, it's all stations ahead.
Well done, Ruth. Annette Pearson. Well done, Annette. Wow, the messages are coming through. Well done. And if you want to connect with Annette, here's her details. And just talk us to where we can find your stuff, how we can connect with you, your social media handles. I'll put them up as well, but just tell us.
Okay, right. So social media handle is so like in terms of Facebook, it's Listening to Your Voice Publishing, Listen to Your Voice, Annette Ruth Pearson now. On LinkedIn, look for Annette Ruth Pearson. On Instagram, it's Empowering Transformations. So they're my handles. I've also got my own YouTube channel where I share sermons, which is called, at the moment, it's Ruth Pearson Ministry. So if you want to hear me preaching and sharing some of the journey that I've been on, you can find me there as well. So different places in social media, depending on whether or not you're faith-based or not faith-based.
Ruth, all I can say is that you're kicking, Ruth. You're kicking. You're pushing. You're. There's like an energy burst that's coming out of you constantly, saying, "Right, this is the time. This is it. This is my season. I've got to push out now. I can't hold it back. Nothing's gonna stop me." And you're just pushing, man. How do you feel about this season that you're in?
I think it's like, I use the analogy of, when the children of Israel crossed over into the promised land. So they went from Egypt and they went in the wilderness, and then they went into this promised land. And when they went in the promised land, God promised them that they would occupy houses they didn't build, that they would eat food that they didn't eat. They would drink from wells that they didn't dig, because the people had gone ahead and done the work. And I think now God is allowing me, like through this platform that we're using today, that God now is allowing other people that have been on that journey with me, for us now to use our skills together to go now and occupy this promised land. Because as we occupy the promised land, then we will be able to reap the reward of the journey that we've been on in the past. So I think this is my time of reaping now, that, I've crossed over from the wilderness, and now I need to reap and share my story with others to encourage them that you might be in your wilderness, but know that the wilderness journey will come to an end and you will get into your promised land.
So in the middle of your why, in the middle of asking why, you're not sure how everything's going to happen. You're not sure how it's going to take place. You're in the pit, but the wilderness years is preparing you for something great. The wilderness years is preparing you for something awesome. And as Ruth has expressed, when you follow what's inside of you, when you listen to the voice that's speaking to you, when you tune in to your own intuition and respond with producing what's inside of you and pushing out to the world, contributing to the world what you have and what you've brought, that is the promised land. Because there's no greater feeling. There's no greater feeling than helping to change other people's lives. There's no greater feeling than helping to push something out into the marketplace, put something out that people. It's about being omnipresent. Ruth, you're omnipresent now, Ruth. You're everywhere. You're everywhere, Ruth. You're omnipresent. You're everywhere. You're here. You're there. People are hearing about you. People are speaking about you. People are talking to you. And you're making an impact in the world. Ruth, I just want to thank you for being you. I want to thank you for connecting up and for just staying in contact all those years. I just want to thank you, because you know what? You never know who you know, why you know them, but every so often you realize, amazing. So thank you, Ruth. And Bella says, thank you, Ruth. Amazing.
Thank you for having me as your guest today. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share your story, my story with others.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you've been excited as I am. I know you've been on the edge of your chair. I know you've been rocking your chair listening to Annette Ruth Pearson talking about her story, sharing everything that she has to offer, from the pit experience to publishing and producing what she's got. Guys, we're encouraging you to get out there and do what you came to do. We're encouraging you to be the best version of yourself and to be what you're prepared and what you're, pregnant with an idea. Pregnant with an idea that's going to change your life. You have an idea that you're pregnant with right now, but you're ignoring it and you're looking for something else. You're looking for something else to come through you, but you are it. You're already it. All you have to do is plug in to you. Plug into you. Hey, before I go, let me just jump onto the sponsor here before I disappear. You are listening to the Message Talk Show and Podcast. Do you believe you have something to share? Do you believe you have something to contribute? Do you have a story to tell the world, to share with your community? Gandhi said, man often becomes what he believes himself to be. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. So join us on the Message Talk Show and Podcast with host Alex Gordon.
So if you're a passionate individual, if you're a mission-centered individual, and you feel excited about what Ruth is talking about today, and you want to come and share your story, I want you to connect with me, themessagetalkshow.com. Tune in, connect, subscribe, get connected to me, and let's start talking about getting you to pushing your story out and connecting with the world, because we bring out the best version of yourself. And here, there's a power inside of you. There is a power that's inside of you that needs to touch the world in this season that we're in right now. Ladies and gentlemen, tune in on Thursday for the Message Talk Show with Alex Gordon. Miss the show. You got to be on the show.